Imagine this. You wake up one morning with an unsettling realization. The life you've been living, your choices, your beliefs, even the desires that drive you forward, may not truly be your own. Instead, they might be the echoes of other people's expectations, the weight of cultural conditioning, or the invisible influences of a world that has shaped you since birth. Pause here for a moment. Let this sink in. How much of who you are, your personality, your ambitions, your fears, is authentically you? And how much of it is a mask you've worn so long you've forgotten what lies beneath? This is the question Carl Gustav Jung dared to ask, and his answer is as liberating as it is terrifying. Life does not truly begin until you find yourself. But what does it mean to find yourself? Is it just about becoming more self-aware? Or is there a deeper, far more transformative process at play? One that requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face the parts of yourself you've spent years avoiding? Stay with me, because this is where our journey begins. Over the next hour, we are going to walk step by step through Jung's most profound insights, uncovering the hidden forces that shape your identity, the masks you wear, the shadows you suppress, and the archetypes buried in the depths of your unconscious mind. By the end, you'll see why most people never truly find themselves, and you'll discover how you can break free. From the moment we enter this world, we are given names, roles, and labels. A child is praised when they behave properly, and punished when they step outside the boundaries of what's considered acceptable. We learn quickly what earns approval and what brings shame. Little by little, a mask is built. Jung called it the persona. The persona is the face we present to the world. It's the version of ourselves we carefully construct so that society accepts us. It's useful. It allows us to function, to build relationships, to fit in. But here's the problem. The more we identify with this mask, the more we forget that it's just a mask. We begin to confuse the role we play with the truth of who we are. Think about it. How often do you feel like you're performing? How often do you hold back your real feelings just to maintain peace, or act in ways that are expected rather than authentic? Now imagine what happens over decades of living this way. The persona becomes so polished, so convincing, that the true self retreats further and further into the unconscious. And here lies the first barrier to self-discovery. Most people live and die without ever questioning whether the life they lived was truly theirs. But Jung didn't stop at the mask. He pointed to something even more powerful and far more frightening. If the persona is what we show the world, then the shadow is what we hide from it. The shadow is made of everything we suppress and reject. The anger we weren't allowed to express, the desires we were told were shameful, the vulnerabilities we buried to appear strong. It even holds our hidden strengths, the parts of ourselves that didn't fit into the roles we were taught to play. Here's the unsettling truth. The shadow does not vanish just because you refuse to see it. It doesn't go away simply because you push it down. Instead, it works in secret. It influences your thoughts, it shapes your behaviors, and it reveals itself in ways you don't even notice. Have you ever disliked someone instantly without really knowing why? Have you ever been triggered by another person's behavior in a way that felt almost irrational? Jung believed that this is projection, the shadow at work. The qualities we reject in ourselves are the very qualities we condemn in others. But here's the paradox. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's the missing piece of your wholeness. Jung's great insight was that true psychological growth doesn't come from eliminating the shadow. It comes from integrating it, facing what you've denied, accepting what you've hidden, and in doing so, unlocking a source of power and authenticity you never thought possible. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that quiet, gnawing sense of unrest? That feeling that something is missing, even if you've achieved success, recognition, or approval? That's the voice of your deeper self calling you. Most people silence that voice with distractions, scrolling endlessly through social media, drowning in work, numbing themselves with entertainment, food, or habits that keep them from sitting alone in silence. Because silence is dangerous. In silence, the truth emerges. And the truth is often uncomfortable. But avoiding the truth doesn't erase it. The suppressed parts of you will always find a way to surface. They might show up as anxiety, as self-sabotage, as unfulfilling relationships, or as a constant sense of being lost? Jung's message was clear. Until you face yourself, you will never truly live. So what does it mean to begin? It begins with awareness, with questioning the roles you've been playing, with daring to ask, who am I when the masks are gone? It means looking at your fears not as enemies, but as messages. Looking at your insecurities not as weaknesses, but as guides pointing toward wounds that need healing. And most of all, it means stepping into a process Jung called individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming your most authentic self. Individuation is not about rejecting society entirely, nor is it about destroying the mask. It's about recognizing the mask for what it is and reconnecting with the deeper self beneath it. It's about weaving together the light and the dark, the strengths and the vulnerabilities, the conscious and the unconscious into a whole and authentic identity. This is where life truly begins. And yet, this is where most people stop. Because to embark on this journey requires more than curiosity. It requires courage. It requires you to stand in front of the mirror and face parts of yourself you may not like. It requires you to confront the conditioning of a lifetime. But the reward is unlike anything else. Freedom. The freedom to live not as a fragment of yourself, not as a performance for others, but as the whole, untamed truth of who you are. In this first part of our journey, we've uncovered the masks and the shadows. But this is only the beginning. In the next chapter, we will go even deeper into the ancient forces Jung called archetypes. These universal patterns, hidden in the depths of your unconscious, are shaping your identity, your choices, and even your destiny. Understanding them could change the way you see yourself forever. Because if finding yourself begins with lifting the mask, then the next step is discovering the timeless patterns written deep within your soul. Are you ready to see what lies beneath? Let's continue our journey. In the first part, we uncovered the masks we wear and the shadows we hide. We saw how our identities are shaped not just by who we truly are, but by what society expects us to be. Now we go deeper into something far more ancient and universal. Carl Jung believed that beneath the surface of every individual psyche lies something he called the collective unconscious. This is not just your personal memories or your private experiences. It is a vast reservoir of patterns, symbols, and forces that are inherited across generations, passed down through the human story itself. Think about this. Across all cultures, across all time, humanity has told the same kinds of stories. The hero who sets out on a dangerous journey, the wise mentor who offers guidance, the shadowy figure who represents temptation or destruction, the innocent child who embodies purity and potential. Why do these same characters appear again and again? In myths, in religions, in fairy tales, and even in the movies we watch today? Because they are not just fictional, they are archetypes, universal patterns of the human psyche that live inside each of us. Jung argued that these archetypes are like psychological blueprints. They are not fixed roles, but dynamic forces that influence the way we think, feel, and act. They shape our dreams, our desires, our fears, and even our relationships. And here's the shocking part. Most of us live our entire lives influenced by these archetypes without ever realizing it. Let's take the most famous one, the hero. The hero archetype is the part of you that longs for purpose, that feels called to something greater. It's the force that pushes you to grow stronger, to face challenges, to rise beyond your limitations. Whenever you feel that stirring inside you, that whisper that says you are meant for more, you are hearing the voice of the hero. But every hero has an enemy, and here the shadow returns. In myths and stories, the hero must confront the monster, the dragon, the villain. But in reality, the monster's inside us. It's our fear, our doubt, our self-sabotage. It's the voice that says you're not good enough, you'll never succeed, it's safer to stay small. Have you felt this battle within yourself? That push and pull between the part of you that wants to rise and the part of you that wants to hide? This is the hero and the shadow in conflict. And the truth is, the shadow is not meant to be destroyed. It is meant to be integrated. The hero's victory comes not from slaying the monster, but from learning what the monster represents. Now let's go further. One of Jung's most powerful insights was that within each of us exists both masculine and feminine energies. He called these the anima and the animus. The anima represents the feminine side within a man: intuition, creativity, emotion, receptivity, connection to the unconscious. The animus represents the masculine side within a woman: logic, structure, discipline, assertiveness, drive. These are not about gender in the physical sense. They are about energy, about balance. Jung believed that when these forces are denied or suppressed, inner conflict arises. For example, a man who rejects his anima may struggle to connect with his emotions. He may fear vulnerability, seeing it as weakness, and so he becomes rigid, cut off from his deeper self. A woman who rejects her animus may hesitate to assert herself, holding back from leadership, fearing she isn't strong or decisive enough. But when these inner forces are embraced and integrated, they become sources of immense power. The man who accepts his anima discovers depth, empathy, and creative vision. The woman who embraces her animus discovers strength, clarity, and confidence. And here is the lesson. Finding yourself is not about choosing one side over the other. It is about wholeness. It is about balance. It is about weaving together all parts of yourself, masculine and feminine, light and shadow, known and unknown, into a complete self. Now let's look at a few more archetypes that may be secretly guiding your life. The wise old man. Woman. This is the voice of inner wisdom, the mentor that appears in dreams or in the form of guides and teachers in life. Whenever you hear a deep, steady knowing that goes beyond logic, that's this archetype speaking. The child. This represents innocence, wonder, and potential. It's the part of you that still believes in possibility, that wants to explore, that feels awe in the face of life. But if ignored, the child can also become wounded, carrying feelings of abandonment or fear. The trickster. Mischief, chaos, the one who breaks rules and challenges systems. Sometimes this force shows up in your life as unexpected events that disrupt your plans. Sometimes it shows up inside you as the urge to rebel against what no longer serves you. These archetypes are not random. They are the building blocks of the human story, and they are alive inside you, shaping the way you live your life. So let me ask you, which archetype do you feel most connected to right now? Are you in the midst of a hero's journey, facing the shadow of your fears? Are you being called to balance the anima and animus within you? Are you listening to the wise old man who speaks through your intuition, or the child who longs for wonder? When you begin to see your life through the lens of these archetypes, everything changes. You realize that your struggles are not meaningless. They are part of an ancient pattern, a story as old as humanity itself. This is why Jung's insights are so powerful. They give us a map, a way to navigate the unconscious, a way to recognize that the dramas of our lives are not just personal, they are universal. And the moment you see this, you begin to step outside of the illusion that you are merely a small, isolated self. You realize that you are participating in something much larger. But here's the key. Archetypes are not destiny. They are potentials. You can live your life unconsciously, repeating the same patterns, trapped in roles you don't even know you're playing. Or you can awaken to them. You can recognize the forces at work, integrate them, and use them as stepping stones on your path to individuation. This is the next step in finding yourself. Learning to see the patterns beneath the surface, the universal forces shaping your identity. And yet, even this is not the whole picture. Because if archetypes shape your unconscious, then what happens when you begin to confront the deepest illusion of all, the illusion of the self itself? In the next part of this journey, we will explore Jung's most radical insight that the self you think you are, the labels, the identity, the story you tell yourself, is only a fragment of a much greater, evolving truth. If you thought the mask and the shadow were shocking, what comes next will challenge the very foundation of who you believe yourself to be. You've taken off the mask. You've glimpsed the shadow. You've met the hidden archetypes that shape your inner world. But now we arrive at the most dangerous part of this journey, the place where the ground beneath you begins to shake. Because the truth is, the you think you are may not exist in the way you believe. Carl Jung once wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you." Let that sink in. Most people walk through life not knowing who they truly are. They believe their identity is fixed, solid, and separate. I am this name, this body, this role, this story. But beneath that story lies something deeper, something Jung called the ego. The ego is not the enemy. It's a necessary tool. It is the conscious mind, the I that navigates daily life. It is the voice that says, I am John, I am Maria, I am a teacher, I am a father, I am a success, I am a failure. The ego gives you a sense of continuity, a way to function in the world. But here is the illusion. The ego is not the whole of who you are. It is only a fragment, a mask within the mask. Imagine your ego as a small boat floating on a vast ocean. The boat believes it is the entirety of existence, but beneath it lies the depths of the unconscious, the shadow, the archetypes, the collective wisdom of humanity. And beyond even that lies something greater. The self with a capital S. Jung believed that the true self is not the ego. The true self is the totality of your being, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, past and future. The self is not bound by the little story your ego clings to. It is vast, timeless, and connected to something much larger than your personal life. And here's the paradox. To find yourself, you must first lose yourself. Think about this. How often do we defend our egos as if our lives depend on them? We argue when someone challenges our beliefs. We feel attacked when someone questions our identity. We suffer when reality doesn't match the story we've told ourselves. All of this is the ego clinging to control, terrified of dissolving. But what if dissolving is exactly what must happen? Many spiritual traditions echo this truth. Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, a construct that arises from attachment. Hinduism speaks of the Atman, the true self, hidden beneath the ego's false self. Even modern psychology hints at it, that growth begins when we stop identifying only with the conscious ego and begin listening to the unconscious. Jung called this process individuation. It is the path of becoming whole, of transcending the narrow limits of the ego and aligning with the deeper self. Here's an example. A man loses his job. His ego is shattered because it had attached itself to the identity of being successful, of being needed, of being valuable through work. He falls into despair, but if he dares to look deeper, he may find that beneath the ego's pain lies an invitation, a call to discover a purpose that is not tied to status or paycheck, but to something essential within him. Or think of someone who goes through heartbreak. The ego screams, I am worthless, I am unloved, I am broken. But beneath that suffering lies the possibility of growth, of learning that love does not come from clinging to another, but from awakening the deeper love of self. Every time the ego crumbles, the true self has a chance to emerge. But here's the danger. Most people mistake the ego for the self. They believe their passing emotions, their temporary roles, their fleeting thoughts are who they truly are. And so they suffer endlessly, defending illusions, fearing change, resisting growth. Ask yourself, when you say I, who are you really referring to? Is it your body which is constantly changing? Is it your mind which never stops shifting? Is it your memories which are incomplete and fragile? Or is it something deeper, the witness of all these things? This is the radical insight Jung pointed to. The ego is not the center of your being. The self is. But don't misunderstand, the goal is not to destroy the ego. Without an ego, you couldn't survive in the world. The goal is to decenter it, to see it for what it is, a tool, not a master, a mask, not the face itself. When you stop identifying solely with your ego, life begins to open up. You realize that the roles you play, parent, leader, friend, artist, are just that. Roles. Important, yes. But not the whole truth of who you are. You are the actor who plays them, not the mask itself. And when this realization dawns, something incredible happens. Freedom. Freedom from the need to constantly defend yourself. freedom from the fear of being wrong, freedom from the endless chase for validation. You stop asking, who do others think I am? And you begin asking, who am I beyond all of this? But here lies the great challenge. If the ego is not the true self, then how do we reach the self? Jung believed the way forward is through integration. You cannot bypass the unconscious, the shadow, the archetypes. You must face them, embrace them, and weave them into the fabric of your life. Only then can the ego expand beyond its limits and align with the self. It is not about escaping the world, but about returning to it with new eyes. Not about denying the ego, but about transforming it into a servant of something greater. And here is where Jung's work becomes more than psychology, it becomes a spiritual path. Because the journey of individuation is not just about mental health, it is about awakening. It is about remembering that the self is not separate from the universe itself. That deep within you lies a spark of the infinite, waiting to be realized. So let me ask you, what are you clinging to right now that is just ego? What pain in your life might actually be an invitation to let go of who you think you are and step into who you truly are? What masks, what stories, what illusions are you ready to shed? Because the moment you loosen your grip on the ego, the moment you dare to look beyond the little I, you begin to touch the vastness of the self. But this path is not easy. In fact, it is terrifying. To let go of the ego feels like death, and in a way it is, the death of illusion. But what dies is not the truth of you. What dies is the false identity that has kept you small. And what is born is freedom, wholeness, authenticity. And in the next part, we will step into this fire more deeply. We will explore the process of individuation itself, the step-by-step journey of integrating shadow, archetype, ego, and self in becoming truly whole. This is not theory. This is not abstract. This is the map to your destiny. We've uncovered the mask. We've faced the shadow. We've explored the archetypes. And we've seen how the ego is only a fragment, while the true self is vast and timeless. But now comes the question that truly matters. How do we actually live this? How do we bridge the gap between the small self we think we are and the greater self that waits within us? This is where Jung introduced one of his most profound ideas, individuation. Individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming whole. It is the process of integrating every part of yourself, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, into a unified self. Imagine a circle. On one side, the light, everything you know and show about yourself. On the other side, the dark, everything you've hidden, rejected, or denied. Individuation is the process of bringing the circle together so that you no longer live divided, but complete. And here's the key. Wholeness is not about rejecting darkness. It's about embracing it. Let's break this journey down step by step. The first step is recognizing the mask you wear. Ask yourself, what image of myself am I projecting to the world? Do I wear the mask of the achiever, the caretaker, the rebel, the spiritual seeker? What am I hiding behind this mask? This step requires brutal honesty, because until you admit you are wearing a mask, you will never take it off. Once the mask begins to slip, the shadow appears. This is the hardest step because it demands that you face the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. Jealousy, fear, rage, greed, vulnerability. Most people run from the shadow. They repress it, they project it onto others. They say, I'm not angry, they are. Or, I'm not selfish, they are. But the truth is, whatever you reject in others is usually a reflection of something unacknowledged in yourself. Integration begins when you say, yes, this too is me. I may not like it, but I will not deny it. As you integrate the shadow, deeper forces begin to stir. Archetypes rise within you. The hero pushing you to grow, the wise mentor guiding your steps, the child reminding you of wonder, the trickster breaking down illusions. At this stage, life itself begins to feel symbolic. Dreams become powerful teachers, encounters feel fated, challenges no longer seem random, but part of a larger story unfolding. The key here is awareness, to recognize which archetypes are at play and to work with them instead of against them. No one is complete without embracing both energies, the anima and animus. For men, this means allowing themselves to feel, to create, to receive, to nurture. For women, it means embracing strength, logic, action, and independence. When these forces are unbalanced, conflict arises. But when they are harmonized, an inner union occurs. Jung called this the sacred marriage. It is a union that takes place not with another person, but within your own soul. At this stage, the ego realizes it is not the master, but the servant. It no longer clings to its roles, its labels, its illusions of control. Instead, it aligns with the greater self. This is the moment many describe as awakening, enlightenment, or rebirth. You feel connected not just to your personal life, but to the whole of existence. You no longer ask, "What do I want from life?" Instead, you ask, "What is life asking of me?" Here is the most overlooked part. Individuation is not about escaping into mystical experiences. It's about bringing that wholeness back into your everyday life. You still live, work, love, struggle, but now you do it with awareness. You no longer reject parts of yourself. You no longer play roles unconsciously. You live as an integrated being, authentic, grounded, whole. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But let me be clear, individuation is not a straight path. It is not a checklist. It is a spiral. You will face your shadow again and again. You will wear new masks and have to take them off. You will struggle with ego and fall into illusion. That's okay. Every cycle takes you deeper, closer to the center. Because individuation is not about reaching a final destination. It is about walking the path itself. It is a lifelong process of unfolding. Let's pause here and reflect. What does individuation mean for you right now? Maybe it means finally admitting the mask you wear and daring to take it off. Maybe it means facing a shadow you've been running from, anger, fear, or loneliness. Maybe it means embracing a new archetype, stepping into the role of the hero, or listening to the guidance of the wise old man within you. Maybe it means surrendering control, letting go of the ego's need to define everything, and opening to the mystery of the self. Wherever you are, the path begins now. But here's the truth. Individuation is not a journey for the faint of heart. It demands courage, honesty, and the willingness to be transformed. It will break you apart before it makes you whole. And yet, it is the only journey that truly matters. Because in the end, all other pursuits, success, fame, wealth, validation, fade away. What remains is whether you have lived authentically, whether you have become who you truly are. In the next part, we will go deeper into the practical side of this path. We will explore the tools Jung offered us: dream analysis, active imagination, symbols and synchronicities that serve as guideposts on the journey of individuation. Because finding yourself is not just philosophy, it is a practice. And those who practice it awaken to a life beyond anything the ego could imagine. We've walked through the mask, the shadow, the archetypes, the ego, and the path of individuation. But here's the question many of you may be asking right now. How do I actually do this? How do I bring Jung's wisdom into my daily life? Because philosophy is beautiful, but without practice, it remains only words. Carl Jung knew this. That's why he developed powerful methods to help us access the unconscious, confront the shadow, and align with the greater self. These are not abstract theories. They are living tools of transformation, and today we will explore them one by one. Jung once said, "Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious." Every night when you sleep, your ego takes a step back, and the deeper parts of your psyche begin to speak. But they don't speak in plain words. They speak in images, in symbols, in strange and mysterious stories. Most of us dismiss our dreams as nonsense, but to Jung, they were messages, letters from the unconscious. Each dream is an attempt to balance the psyche, to show you what you are ignoring, or to guide you toward growth. Think of a dream where you are being chased. On the surface, it's frightening. But ask yourself, what is chasing me? What part of myself am I running from? Often it's the shadow, a repressed emotion, or a truth you don't want to face. or a dream where you're flying. This may reflect the archetype of the hero breaking free, or a moment when your spirit longs for transcendence. The practice here is simple. Write down your dreams every morning. Study them. Look for recurring symbols, characters, or emotions. Don't rush to interpret them literally. Instead, ask, what part of me is this? What is my unconscious trying to reveal? With time, your dreams become a dialogue between your ego and your deeper self. This was one of Jung's most powerful methods, and perhaps the most mysterious. Active imagination is the practice of entering into dialogue with the unconscious while awake. You close your eyes, relax, and allow images, symbols, or figures to arise in your mind. Instead of dismissing them, you engage with them. You speak to them. You listen to what they have to say. For example, imagine you feel a deep fear rising within you. Instead of pushing it away, you give it form. Maybe it appears as a dark figure in your mind. You ask it, who are you? What do you want from me? What lesson are you carrying? What you'll discover is astonishing. These inner figures respond. They reveal truths, insights, even wisdom you didn't know you had. This practice allows you to bring the unconscious into consciousness, to make peace with the shadow, to uncover hidden guidance. It's not fantasy. It's communication with the deeper layers of your psyche. Jung believed that symbols are the language of the soul. Religions, myths, art, all are filled with symbols that carry deep psychological meaning. The cross, the serpent, the sun, the circle, the labyrinth, these are not random. They are archetypal images that connect your personal life to the universal story of humanity. Symbols also arise in dreams, in art, in moments of synchronicity. When a symbol appears, pay attention. Ask, what does this mean for me right now? What is this symbol trying to awaken within me? For Jung, even something as simple as a mandala, a circular pattern found in many cultures, represented the self, the wholeness we are all seeking. He would often draw mandalas during times of inner transformation, watching how they revealed his psychological state. You can do the same. Draw, paint, or journal symbols that appear in your dreams or your daily life. Over time, you'll begin to see a map of your unconscious unfolding before you. One of Jung's most fascinating ideas was synchronicity, the experience of meaningful coincidences. Have you ever thought of someone and then they suddenly called you, or found the exact book you needed at the exact right time, or had a chance encounter that changed your life? Jung believed these were not random accidents. They were signs of alignment between your inner world and the outer world. Moments when the unconscious reveals itself through events. Pay attention to synchronicities. They are like breadcrumbs, guiding you along the path of individuation. They remind you that life is not meaningless chaos, but a tapestry woven with purpose. One of the simplest yet most powerful practices is writing. Take a journal and allow yourself to write the thoughts you'd never dare to say out loud. The anger, the envy, the fear, the vulnerability. Don't censor yourself. Let the shadow speak. At first it will be uncomfortable, but with time you'll see patterns. You'll notice that what you thought was shameful is actually a doorway to deeper truth. You'll begin to integrate the parts of yourself you've rejected. Shadow journaling is a daily practice of honesty. It is how you learn to say, this too is me. Jung believed that creativity is not just art, it is therapy. Painting, writing, music, dance, these are ways the unconscious finds expression. When you create without judgment, without agenda, you allow the deeper self to speak. You may find archetypes appearing in your art, symbols revealing themselves in your writing, or emotions you didn't know you carried released through music. Creativity is the bridge between the unconscious and the conscious. It's how you bring the invisible into form. Now let's pause. Do you see what all these tools have in common? They are ways of listening. Listening to dreams, listening to inner images, listening to symbols, listening to synchronicity, listening to the shadow, listening to creativity. The path of individuation is not about forcing, controlling, or conquering. It is about listening. The self is always speaking. The question is, are you paying attention? Let me leave you with this. Jung's methods are not meant for scholars alone. They are not trapped in textbooks. They are living practices available to you right now. Tonight, write down your dreams. Tomorrow, draw a symbol that arises. Next week, notice the synchronicities in your life. Begin a shadow journal. Try active imagination. Each step is a conversation with your deeper self. Each step is a movement toward wholeness. And in the next part, we arrive at the culmination of this entire journey. We will explore the ultimate goal of Jung's work, the awakening of the self, the realization of wholeness, and the rebirth into a life of meaning and authenticity. Because in the end, all of Jung's insights point to one truth. The journey is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you already are. So here we are, the final and most important step of this journey. We've spoken about masks, shadows, archetypes, symbols, and the methods to uncover the unconscious. But all of this leads us toward one profound destination, the awakening of the self. This is not about the small self, the ego that clings to labels, titles, and roles. It's about the true self, the wholeness of your being, the vast consciousness within you that transcends fear, conditioning, and illusion. Carl Jung believed that this awakening was the highest goal of human life. He called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. And when this happens, life does not just continue, it begins anew. Let's begin here. To awaken the self, something has to die. Not your body, not your spirit, but the illusion of who you thought you were. The false identity built on approval, fear, and conformity has to fall away. The ego, with all its clinging to, I am this, I am that, has to surrender. This can feel terrifying. It feels like death because the ego resists letting go. But this is not death, it is rebirth. The caterpillar cannot become the butterfly unless it dissolves inside the cocoon. Likewise, you cannot step into the fullness of who you are without letting go of the false stories that have defined you. When the illusions drop, what remains is not emptiness, it is wholeness. You are not just fragments of light and shadow. You are not just masculine or feminine, rational or emotional, conscious or unconscious. You are all of these, unified. Jung described the self as the center of the psyche, the totality of all you are. It is the deepest, most authentic version of you, the one that has always been there, waiting for you to remember. And when you live from this place, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing external approval because you realize your worth is intrinsic. You stop running from your shadow because you see that your flaws and wounds hold hidden power. You stop fearing the unknown because you understand that mystery is the birthplace of transformation. Wholeness is not about perfection. It is about integration. It is about saying, this too is me. Jung was deeply concerned with the question of meaning. He saw that modern people often felt lost, empty, and disconnected. Not because life had no meaning, but because they had lost connection to it. The awakening of the self restores that connection. When you live from your authentic self, meaning is no longer something you search for. It flows naturally from within you. Every act, every choice, every relationship becomes an expression of your true essence. You may not know exactly where life will take you, but you will feel aligned. You will feel as though your steps are guided by something greater than yourself, because they are. But let's be clear, awakening the self is not just about personal peace, it comes with responsibility. Because when you see yourself clearly, you also see the world clearly. You can no longer hide behind illusions. You can no longer blame others or remain asleep. Jung believed that the transformation of the individual is the first step toward the transformation of humanity. A whole person creates ripples of wholeness around them. Your journey of self-discovery is not selfish, it is service. By becoming who you truly are, you give others permission to do the same. Here's where Jung's vision becomes even more radical. He did not see the self as something isolated. He saw it as deeply connected to the collective unconscious, the shared field of humanity's wisdom, archetypes, and ancestral memory. When you awaken to the self, you realize you are not separate. You are part of a vast web of consciousness. You carry within you the struggles and victories of generations past, and your awakening contributes to the evolution of everyone around you. In other words, finding yourself is not just about you, it is about humanity itself. So let's bring this all together. Finding yourself is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong process. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you already are. It is not about chasing perfection. It is about embracing wholeness. Life begins when you stop running from yourself. Life begins when you stop hiding behind the persona. Life begins when you face the shadow, embrace the archetypes, and awaken to the self. And when that happens, fear loses its grip. Doubt dissolves. You begin to live with courage, authenticity, and meaning. This is the great invitation of Jung's work, not just to understand psychology, but to live it, not just to think about transformation, but to embody it. Now the choice is yours. You can continue living as a fragment, defined by the masks you wear, the fears you carry, and the illusions you cling to. Or you can step forward into wholeness. You can embrace the mystery. You can awaken to the self and live a life that is truly yours. The journey will not be easy. It will demand courage, honesty, and surrender. But the reward is beyond measure. Because once you find yourself, once you awaken to the self, life does not just improve, it begins. So I ask you now, are you ready to awaken? Are you ready to remember who you truly are? Because the path has always been within you, and the time is now. Life begins when you find yourself.